Hey guys, Christoph the Polish Geek, and welcome to another movie review. And this time I'm going to talk about Haunted Mansion, the newest one. But before we talk about the actual movie, let's talk about some history about the famous Disneyland ride. Like, I sadly never experienced the actual Disneyland California version. I've been to Disneyland twice, and unfortunately the first time I've been there was during Halloween, and that's the time unfortunately they have the Nightmare Before Christmas version. And I don't know why they have to replace Halloween with the Nightmare Before Christmas version, since I actually think the original is much better fit for Halloween, but whatever. And then of course, when I've been there again, a year later, it was like August, I believe, and the ride was closed also for refurbishment for the Nightmare Before Christmas version. So, because of that, I never, unfortunately, experienced the true version of the ride in Disneyland. Although, I'm very familiar with the Phantom Manor version, the Disneyland Paris version, which again is called Phantom Manor, and I love Phantom Manor. It's like one of my favorite attractions in Disneyland Paris. It's scary, it's dark, but it's awesome. I love Phantom Manor. What I especially like about the Phantom Manor version is that it's a very scary story. That like the story is decidedly not lighthearted. Like it's very much a horror story actually. Like, and not just like comedy horror. No. It's a full-on horror, but that's a story for another time though. Returning to Haunted Mansion, the only time I did experience Haunted Mansion for real was when I was like in Disneyland, Florida, when I was like 13 years old. Yeah, that's the only time I experienced the Haunted Mansion version of the ride. I experienced it in Magic Kingdom, Orlando, Florida, but it was many years ago. But my biggest experience with that ride though is the Phantom Manor version in Disneyland Paris, which I think is an excellent version and one of the best rides in the history of Disneyland, and one of my two favorites in Disneyland Paris, together with Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay, so now let's get on to the actual movie. And what did I think of the movie? Hard to say. Like, I liked parts of the movie, but ultimately I had to say it was very cheesy. Like, because Disney has not been doing very well. Neither of their animated movies or their live action movies. Like almost all their modern live action movies suck. Like last year, Enchanted 2, Hocus Pocus 2, and don't even get me started on any of their trashy live action remakes of their awesome classics. Don't get me started on any of those. Like, the only decent live-action Disney movie from last year, I say, was Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and that's part animated, part live-action, but still, that's the only decent Disney movie from last year. Everything else was trash. And what did I think of this movie? As I said, there were parts I liked. I like how they set the story up in New Orleans, because for a ghost story, I think New Orleans is an amazing fit. And I've been to New Orleans. I have cousins who live in New Orleans, and I've been there. It's a pretty nice city. And so yeah, I think setting the story in New Orleans was a perfect fit to set the story into. And then the story is that the mother and her son move into the haunted house, but the house is haunted. So of course they enlist the help of a ghost tour guide and a priest to help them get rid of the ghosts. And then of course, like, there are lots and lots of references to the original ride, and all the Easter eggs and all are really fun, and I really like them, especially that I could recognize some of the parts from the Phantom Manor version. Like, I know a main villain is technically the hitchhiker ghost, but he gave me strong vibes of the Phantom, Henry Ravenswood character from Phantom Manor, even though technically he was supposed to be based on the hitchhiker ghost. And his name in this movie was Alistair Crump. The best scene in the whole movie though, I think, was the stretching room scene. That scene was really well done and I really loved it. Like, stretching room actually at least in Phantom Manor, was always like the scariest part for me. Like, I don't know why, but always like those stretching portraits were just like always really scared me, especially when I was much younger. And then like in the Haunted Mansion version in Orlando, Florida, although still pretty scary, I don't think it was quite as scary as the Phantom Manor version. And although obviously this movie very much used the Haunted Mansion version of the stretching room, but it makes perfect sense considering like that's the original version of the ride and the one that most fans probably are familiar with outside of the Euro Disney fans. But yeah, I thought the stretching room scene was simply excellent and probably my favorite scene in the movie. And also the story of the movie was decent, like the whole idea of getting rid of the ghosts of and all. Yeah, that was a pretty cool story, if not very original. And like one of the major complaints lots of fans had about the original 2003 movie was that the whole theme of Haunted Mansion is that ghosts really enjoy having an afterlife party and they don't ever want to move to the afterlife, while the ghosts in the 2003 version was very much about trying to move on into afterlife, which is basically contradictory to the themes of the original ride, which is that they don't want to move into the afterlife, they just want to have a party in the mansion. And especially the ending, this kind of, I feel like, was much closer to the original version of the ride, because here basically, like once Lord Crumb gets banished to the afterlife, all the other ghosts he manipulated, they settle in the mansion and have a party, and you could totally get vibes of the original ride. I mean, I got more Phantom Manor vibes because that's the version I'm most familiar with, but it's obvious that those are probably things that Phantom Manor has actually in common with the original Haunted Mansion version. So ultimately, I say the story of the movie was decent and the Easter eggs and references to the original ride were pretty good. But here come the negatives. Like first, the CGI here is just terrible. It's terrible! Like we live in a 2023 and the CGI is so horrible. Like because of that the ghosts were not even scary at all. Like this movie is rated PG-13, but in all honesty, I didn't see that. Like the original movie from 2003, which I am planning to do actually a retro review on soon. Like even though this movie is PG, but at the same time, I found the movie from 2003 in some ways darker than this, because that movie had actually a more darker story, while this movie, like for me, it wasn't scary at all. I guess maybe you could make an argument that the reason it's PG-13 was because it deals very much with the themes of grief and loss and moving on. Those are kinda adult themes, so I guess maybe that's why this movie is more like PG-13 rated, but in all honesty, other than that, I think the story of the 2003 movie was actually darker. So yes, even though this movie is PG-13, it didn't feel that way at all. And as I said, it wasn't really scary, because the original ride, at least the Phantom Manor version, the ride is actually pretty scary. It's awesome, but it can be scary and give you creepy vibes. But this movie wasn't scary one bit. It was far more funny than scary. And there's nothing wrong with comedy. It was supposed to be horror comedy, but I repeat, the movie wasn't scary, for me at least. And also, most of the characters in the movie were not that likable. I guess the tour guide, and the priest, Father Kent, and the boy Travis, they were probably my two favorite characters in the movie, Father Kent and the boy Travis. But even with Father Kent, there was actually a twist towards the end of him that involved him that I didn't really like. I know, the twist probably was meant to be for comedy, but the twist, the reveal, spoiler alert, the reveal that he wasn't really a priest, more like someone who pretended to be a priest, wasn't that really cool of a twist for me. I wasn't a huge fan of that. I would rather have him just be a priest like he was initially stated to be. So ultimately, Haunted Mansion was a decent movie, certainly better than any of the most recent Disney live action movies, maybe with the exception of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, but other than that, it was most certainly better than almost anything live action Disney puts out. Even though ultimately it was a very, very cheesy movie with a somewhat decent storyline and cool Easter eggs, but other than that, a pretty cheesy and forgettable movie. Like, I'll just stick with the Phantom Manor Disneyland Paris ride and maybe the Haunted Mansion ride in California and Florida when I ever come to those parks again. So these are my thoughts on the Haunted Mansion movie. And if you want to know which one I like more, this one or the 2003 one, brace yourself because I'm planning on doing a retro review for the 2003 movie too. And thank you guys for checking out this video. Press the like button, please subscribe to this channel, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later, bye!